The anime Another single-handedly terrified an entire generation of people of umbrellas. Let me explain. So there I was, me and my homeboy, we had just gotten out of the club, you know, we were pop locking and dropping it, we were getting jiggy with it, we're waiting on our Uber, we're sitting there playing on our little phones, when all of a sudden, I feel a couple drops of rain hit my head, and I'm like, oh, it's about to rain. And then it starts pouring. And I'm immediately kind of upset, I'm like, man, I should have brought a jacket, when's that Uber gonna get here? And that's when my buddy, my so-called friend, he pulls it out. Pulls out an umbrella. He pulled out a murder weapon, for God's sake. He whipped it out like it was nothing, and I'm immediately terrified. I'm trying to scoot a little bit away from him, but he's like, hey man, it's pouring rain, the Uber's almost here, why don't you get underneath this umbrella? And I'm like, nah man, I'm doing that manly thing, I'm puffing my shoulders. I'm like, nah dude, it's just water, like I ain't afraid of no rain, I'm fine. Meanwhile, the rain is coming down heavier and heavier, and he's like, dude, just get under the umbrella. You don't want to be like soaking wet for the Uber, just get, dude, what are you doing? Stop being an idiot. And we kept doing this for a while, and eventually I just lied and told him that I was homophobic. I didn't want to get under the umbrella with him because I didn't want to admit the real reason. I was terrified. He had a weapon that could just immediately kill you in the most gruesome way ever, and I was completely scared, and I didn't want to admit that. Like, the second he had whipped out that umbrella, I had Vietnam flashbacks of this anime. I had that 1,000-yard stare. I was pulling like a Full Metal Jacket in my head. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, there is a scene in the anime called Another where this poor girl, Yukari Sakuragi, gets impaled by her own umbrella. This anime is a straight horror anime, and it is not good. Like, the anime itself isn't really good, but in my opinion is a cult classic. It's like those horror movies from like the 1980s. Like, they're not good, they're really bad, but because of when they came out and because of like the impact they had, they're considered classics. And that is exactly how I feel about Another. The story is based off of its light novel, which came out in 2009, and from everything that I've seen, the light novel is infinitely times better at storytelling and pretty much everything than the anime. Because the anime like kind of skips a lot of things, it feels rushed, it's not really too deep, there's a lot of things that don't match, and there's a lot of like those moments where like if you would have just said something, like the whole world would have been fine. So it's not like a great anime or anything, but in my opinion, it's still a cult classic. So Another officially came out 10 years ago on January 10th, 2012. So it is an old anime from a simpler time. It's one of the first animes that I ever watched, and definitely the first horror anime that I ever watched, and it still will hold a nice little place in the back of my mind, terrifying me of umbrellas to this day. So now let's talk about it. Let's figure out what this anime is all about. So we really have two main characters, Koichi Sakakibara and Mai Misaki, or Mai Misaki. I think it's Mai. I'm terrible with names. Who is our adorable little waifu eye patch pirate. And the story revolves around a curse that's placed upon the class 3-3, a 9th grade class, and the curse basically kills people every year in very gruesome ways. This is like the final destination of anime. And one thing before we get into this curse that really bothers me about this anime, you would think our main character Koichi, it's a horror anime, you would think this would be the guy that is like Batman. He's like, Rachel, he's like flying through the night, he's being like detective and shit, he's the one solving everything, you know, vengeance and shit, he's like beating up random old people for jaywalking. You think this would be that guy, but he's kind of just there. He doesn't really solve it, he's not like the detective. Like, you would think the main character, he would be the one to do all the important and like hard-hitting decisions, but he's just not. He's not really that guy. He's just kind of there. And that's why I think Mai Misaki kind of steals the show with Another, is because she is kind of that person. And we'll get to more of that here in a little bit. But let's talk about this curse. Let's talk about this Final Destination style curse that is placed upon this class. So it all began in the year 1972. This is the first year, this is when the curse finally began. A student by the name of Misaki Yomiyama was killed during the school year. So halfway through the school year, this person died in a house fire. And this person was so beloved by their class. This person was like the Beyonce of their class. Everyone adored them. They could not live without this person. So they did what any sane people would do. They pretended like they didn't die. They continued talking to this person. If they were handing out tests, they would put one on their desk. And the teacher was even going along with this. Like, everyone pretended that this person was still alive. And that is how the curse began, because the class invited death into their class. They refused to let the dead go. So at the end of the year, when the students took their graduation picture, the dead one, Misaki, was still in the picture, just sitting there smiling all creepy like. And that is the year the curse began. So every year since then, the curse would start. And it would start by having one extra person in the class that shouldn't be there. So the class roster would go up by one, and they would be short on desk. Like, what's going on? And the first couple of years, they all thought it was just an error. They're like, computer errors, what are you gonna do? And they just completely ignored it. No one ever really dug too deep into why there was an extra student and, who the student was. They all just thought it was an error. They grabbed another desk, and they began the school year with having an extra person. Well, that extra person is referred to as the dead one, and that's exactly what they are. They are someone who has been killed by the curse in the past, resurrected, and placed in this classroom. Now, the dead one doesn't know they're dead, and they looked and act just like any normal living person. Now, you might be wondering, how do they not, notice that this dead bitch who died last year is here? Well, because the curse affects people's memories. It can affect memories, it can affect documents, it can affect any physical record, Dude, this curse has, so much power, it can pretty much mess with you however it wants. So no one's able to kind of put together who the dead one is because their memories have all been tampered with and all the class records. So that's how you know the curse has officially began, when there's an extra student who is in the classroom that shouldn't be. And this curse will always start in April. As soon as the class roster goes up by 1, every month at least one person is always killed. And it's not just a student or teacher in the class who's gonna die. It can be anybody related to those people. So brothers, sisters, moms and dads, and people like that also have a chance to die. Anybody related to class 3-3 has a chance to meet a very, very gruesome death. And from 1973 and on, the curse kind of just did its thing every year and would murder a lot of people, and there was nothing these people could do. Now, you might be wondering, how do they not, do something about this? Well, that's because at the end of the year, after the curse is done doing its murdering for the year, it wants to go on hibernation, wants to go on a little vacation. It's done a lot of murdering. It needs a little cruise. The curse will end. And by the curse ending, the dead one mysteriously just disappears, and everyone's memories of the dead one and everyone's memories of what had happened kind of get tampered with. So they all just think that it was a series of unfortunate events, and they go on with the rest of their life because the curse, again, fucks with their mind and makes them think, shit happens. And then the next year, the curse repeats itself. And this kept going all the way until 1983, when the curse had finally been halted halfway through. So, the curse is doing its usual thing. It's murdering a lot of people. And the class is like, yo, we need to do something. And then someone gets the bright idea, hey, we need Jesus. So they all go to a shrine, and they're like, we're gonna pray the gay away. So they go to the shrine, and the curse stops. And they're all like, hey, all we needed was a little bit of Jesus. And everyone starts, celebrating, hooting and hollering and everything. But little did they know, a student by the name of Katsumi Matsunaga was actually the one who ended the curse. He figured out that the only way to stop this was to kill the dead one. You have to send the dead back to the dead. And he didn't, want to share this with the class because he's very, very passionate about secrets. He's a big secret keeper, so he didn't share it with the class. But one thing about the curse is that if you're the one that kills the dead one, your memories don't erase immediately. You actually get to keep your memories. Everybody else loses them immediately. You actually get to keep them. So a year later, after this event, he ends up leaving clues for future classes to help them figure out how to stop the curse. Heaven forbid you actually tell everyone. You have to be fucking mysterious and cryptic with it. I don't know why. Why do you have to do that? See, there's a lot of holes in this story. There's a lot of logic that just doesn't make sense. But, because it's a story, he has to leave clues, and, the Batman's got to find it. So from 1983 onward, because this guy was a douchebag, the class didn't know how to stop it, and they were doing everything that they could to prevent it. They would move classrooms, they would change the class name, and it was all without any success. So they eventually came up with a little charm. And this charm only has a 50% success rate, so it's not 100% clear that it's going to work. But every year, the students would pick one person to single out, and that person would be the quote-unquote dead one. They would ignore that person the entire year. The teacher would ignore them. The rest of no one would talk to this person. So that way, if they pretend that one doesn't exist, the class roster would be even, because technically that person doesn't exist, so the class is as it should be. And like I said, this charm has a 50% chance of working, so from here on out, it's hit or miss if a lot of people died. And that's when we get to 1998 in the anime, the present day when it all takes place. At the beginning of the year, the charm was placed on Mai Misaki, our lovable eye patch pirate, and she accepted to be the one that did not exist that year. However, our main character, Koichi, was in the hospital because of a collapsed lung. He doesn't have the best body in the world, he's kind of a problem body person. So he was in the hospital when the school year began, and he didn't get the memo that, hey, the curse is a thing, ignore this bitch, that way we all don't fucking die. And when Koichi was in the hospital, he actually had seen Mai in the hospital as well, and that's kind of why he got interested in her in the first place. So when he actually comes back to school, he's like, hey, what I miss, everybody? Party in the house. And he sees Mai and naturally tries to start a conversation with her. Now, normally, you would think, hey, why would nobody try to stop him? Like, shouldn't somebody be in charge of making sure we all don't fucking die? Well, there was a person, Uzami Akazawa, and she was the head of the curse. It was her job to make sure that we all don't die. But of course, the day Koichi goes to school, she's not there to be like, hey, don't fucking kill us. So because she is not there, Koichi is not learned of the curse, and he goes up to talk to Mai, thus breaking the charm and allowing death in. Now, that's how everyone sees it. Everyone sees it as Koichi fucking all of them over and killing them. When in reality, the curse had started a month earlier when Mai's twin sister had actually died instead. So Koichi really didn't have anything to do with the curse starting, but the class decides to blame him anyway. And from here on out, that's when the story begins. People start dying really gruesomely, and that's when the whole umbrella scene happens. That bitch impales herself with the umbrella. It's so bad. The homeroom teacher like commits suicide by like just stabbing themselves. Like this guy gets ran over by a fucking boat. There's a flashback scene where this guy gets struck by lightning, and honestly it's kind of funny because it's just out of nowhere, like bam, God smited him down. And throughout the rest of the story, people just keep dying left and right. Like they die these horrible gruesome deaths. And eventually they do figure out, you know, who the dead one is and how all these people are dying. And I don't really want to ruin that for you guys because in case you do want to watch it, and I'm going to say right now, spoilers ahead. If you want to watch it, stop watching right now and go watch the anime and then come back. But there are a lot of rules that you learn for the curse throughout the anime. And like I said, it always starts in April. It only occurs when the class roster goes up by 1. At least one person will die each month, and it's never stopped. It always continues till the end of the school year. Anybody that is related to someone from class 3-3 is probably gonna die. So even it could be your mom, it could be you, it could be your grandparents, it could be your sister, it could be like anybody related to you that's not like a second cousin twice removed. The curse is only limited to the town, so you could leave the city to protect yourself, but if you leave the city dead, then it doesn't count. So like I said, spoilers ahead. So they all figure out, hey, if we leave the town, we're safe. Somebody dies outside of town, so they're like, oh shit, it's not real. But in reality, that character had like a brain aneurysm before they left town. So he was already on his way to death, and he actually ended up dying because of the brain aneurysm, and they all thought it was because of a different reason. So you can leave the town and be safe, but you have to be able to leave town not dead, if that makes any sense. After graduation, the curse will disappear and all records and memories will go back to the way they were. In other words, no one will remember who the casualty was and what exactly happened, and the only thing they'll think is that they were students who died in the past. And the only way to stop this is to send the dead back to the dead. So now you might be wondering, who is the dead one in Another? Well, it's actually Koichi's aunt, who was a homeroom teacher at the school, and she died the year previously because she was related to someone who it's just the whole thing. But really, it's Koichi's aunt who is the homeroom teacher, and it's really kind of dumb because of the curse, I guess. He doesn't recognize that she's his aunt when they're at school, but when they're at home, he recognizes her as his aunt and the same person. It's really, really dumb. And another thing, Mai can see who the dead one is because she has this special eye and she has the power to see who the dead one is. So she knows who the dead one is. She just doesn't fucking say anything for the longest time. She has her doubts. She's like, ooh, I don't think I know I have this power, but I'm not sure what it does. And she doesn't really like speak up until there's a scene where she's literally about to tell everyone, and then they get interrupted, and then they just never get back to it. This anime, like I said, it's not fucking good. It's not perfect, but it's a cult classic because people die in really weird ways, and it's just a good watch. So that is Another. Don't look, if you just wanted to watch a bunch of people die, if you just wanted to watch a 1980s slasher, this is the anime for you. It's not great in storytelling. It's got so many plot holes, but bitches impaling themselves with umbrellas and getting struck by lightning randomly. It's a very, very good watch. So that is going to be it. Let me know what you guys think of this anime down there below. And if you guys enjoyed it, hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already. And I will see you boys in the next one. Peace.